Okay, greetings once again, guys, and welcome to another edition by iCampSA. In this edition, we're still looking at statistics, but we are now going to focus on group statistics. We'll look at how do you draw your Ogive curve and how to solve group statistics problems. So let's go ahead and have a look at what exactly is happening. And as said, our focus is on group statistics. So with group statistics, what you need to understand is you usually have a couple of data points that you are working with. So let's consider as an example the marks of learners in order for us to have an appreciation of this. So what we can have is we can put them randomly. So I'm going to have a learner who got 23, 25, sorry, 23, 26. Then let's have one who got 29. Then we have a 34, then 38, say 42, and then 45. And let's have 51, then 58, let's have 62, let's have 71, let's have 83, let's have 92. So let's say we have this number or these marks for learners. So what we can do is we can group the data into classes. So let's consider grouping this data, which will be very important when we answer questions. So I can choose to take the data and call it X, okay? The marks of learners, X. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my X, which is just going to be our marks. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to group them as follows. So I'm going to look at marks greater than 0, but let's say less than 20. Okay. And then now I'm going to have 20, and then I'm going to have 40. Okay. Sorry. So I'm going to have X. So we need now X values bigger than 20, but less than or equal to 40. I'm just going to move in steps of tens. Okay. Then I'm going to have 40 less than X, but greater than or equal to 60. Okay. Then I'm going to have 60 less than X, but greater than 80. And then I'm going to have 80 less than X, but greater than, if you look carefully, 100. Okay. Now what we are going to have on the other side is the frequency. So this is where we now look at our data. So how many of these marks fall within 0 and 20? So if you look carefully, we have no mark that is between 0 and 20. So our frequency is going to be 0. Then between, if you observe carefully, 20 and 40, you will see you have this, 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 this. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So we have 6 between 20 and 40. And then if you observe carefully, we're just going to go to between 40 and 60. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So we are going to have a 4. So let's put that. So we are just going to have a 4 there. Okay. Then between 60, above 60 and less than 80, let's have a look. So you'll see that it's above 60. So you have 1, 2. So it's 1, 2, because we should be less than or equal to 80. So you get a 2. Okay. And then now above 80, but less than 100. Now, if you observe carefully, you should be able to see that what we have there is just 2. 1, 2, 2. Okay. This is how we find our frequency. That's how we move from what we have above to having frequency like that. Okay. And then now that we have frequency, there's something that we call cumulative frequency. Okay. Something we call cumulative frequency. Okay. So what that means is it is frequency that is added. Okay. So for your cumulative frequency, the first part, guys, will always be whatever you see there. Okay. And then the second part will always be an addition of what you see here. That is how you get that. Okay. You just add. So if you observe carefully, that is going to be 0 plus 6. That is going to be 6. Okay. And then in order to get the next one, you take the 6 and the 4, you add them. You will see that 6 plus 4, that becomes 10. Okay. And then let's carry on. To get the next one, you take the 10, you go to the 2, you add them, and you'll see 10 plus 2, that will give us a 12. Okay. Then for the last one, you do exactly the same. You take the 12, you go there, you see a 2, you add the 12 and the 2, and what you end up getting is 14. And guess what? The number 14 here speaks about our n. So our 14 here becomes our n. If you observe carefully, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 by 2, that becomes 14. So the last number that is always there, that speaks to n, which is the total number of data points. Okay. Okay. So that is how we deal with our cumulative frequency. So when we now have our group data, the question that I want us to answer is, how do we find the mean? Okay. And this is very interesting. How do we find the mean? And the answer to this, guys, is it depends on the frequency. We need n, the frequency, and the midpoint. So in order for us to find the mean, we need the following. So we need, number 1, our frequency. And then number 2, we need the midpoint. And then number 3, we need n. Okay. So now let's go and deal with the midpoint. What is that about? So if I quickly take what we have above or here, let me just focus on the frequency. And we go to this page here. What I'm going to do is to quickly look for the midpoint. Okay. So this here is frequency. So let's go and look for the midpoint. So when you're looking for the midpoint, guys, what you do is you take the lower limit here and the upper one, you add them, then you divide by 2. Okay. That is what you do. So what you do is you will say that your midpoint will simply be, for the first one, for the first line, it will be 0 plus 20 divided by 2, and that will give us 10. So that means I'm going to put in 10. Okay. Then let's go for the second one, which is that. So our midpoint, that will simply be 20 plus 40 divided by 2. If you observe carefully, that becomes 30. Okay. So I can put in 30 here. And let's go for the next one, which is this one. So we'll have our midpoint. And that will be 40 plus 60 divided by 2. That's going to be 100. So this will be 50. Okay, so we're getting 50 there. And let's go for the next one. So we're here now. You'll see that we'll have our midpoint equaling 60 plus 80 divided by 2. That's going to be 140. So when you divide, you end up getting 70. So we're getting 70 there. Okay. And then let's go for the last one, which is this one. So we'll have our midpoint equaling, we have 80 plus 100 divided by 2, that's 180. That's going to give us 90. Okay, so that there becomes 90. So we need the midpoint in order for us to find the frequency. Then one thing I need to add is that after finding these here, what we will do is go and find our mean. Okay, and our mean, what it's going to be is it's going to be the sum of our frequency times our midpoint divided by n. Okay, what do I mean? What I'm going to do is in our tables, whenever we are required to find the mean, I'm always going to include a table where I'm doing, if you look carefully, F is for frequency, okay? Then midpoint is MP. So I'm always going to include as part of the table where I do the product. So the product that I'm going to do is to do our frequency multiplied by our midpoint. Okay, so now if you observe carefully, we are going to do 0 times 10, and that is going to be 0. Okay, and then we are going to do 6 times 30, double check, 6 by 30, that is going to be 180. Okay, then we are going to do 4 by 50, that should be 200. Okay, and then we are going to do 2 by 70, and that should be 140. Okay, and then we are going to do 2 by 90, and that should be about 180. Okay, let's make some space here. Okay, so that is what we end up getting, guys. And if you observe carefully, we can find that sum where we have 0 plus 180 plus 200 plus 140 plus 180. And what we end up getting here is 700. Then for the frequency or the n, it will just always be 14. But what you can do is if you add up these numbers, you'll see that you'll get 14. Okay, so if you observe carefully, you will see then that your mean, therefore my mean would be equal to the sum here, which is 700. So we have 700 divided by 14. And if we go to our calculator, 700 divided by 14, what we end up getting is 50. Okay, so this means that for this group data, we can therefore say that the mean mark equals 50%. Okay, that is what we are getting as our mean mark. Then now what I want to bring to attention is then how do we deal with the other parts of the data? So how do we find Q1? How do we find Q2? And how do we find Q3? Okay, so in order for us to find these, we need to do a couple of steps. But before we go and do so, let's look at maybe something that is much more easier. There's something which they call the modal class. Okay, so this is the class that has the highest frequency. So if we look at our classes or our groups, we need to look for the one that has the highest frequency. So in our case, if you observe carefully, 0 to 20 we have 6. Sorry, 0 to 20 we have 0. 20 to 40 we have 6. 40 to 60 we have 4. So if you observe carefully, our modal class would be the one that has the highest frequency. So let me create some space and we look at our modal class. So if you observe what we have, you would see that the modal class will be where we have our 6. Okay, so this means for this problem, this here is our modal class. So what we have here, that is our modal class or mode class. Okay, so it means your answer would be x is less than or equal to 40 but bigger than 20. That would be your modal class where we have the highest frequency. Okay, that's very important for you to make sure that you do understand. Guys, it's very simple. So just make sure that you are understanding what we did here. So now that we have this, let's go to the next page and worry about Q1, Q2, and the rest. So before we do this question, let's deal with the concepts first. So let's go ahead now and investigate how do we find our Q1 whenever we are given group data, how do we find Q2, and how do we find Q3? Yeah, so let's go ahead and see. So what we are going to do is we are going to have this table here that is cumulative frequency. Okay, so let's put up this table here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to plot the ogive or the Ogive curve, others would call it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plot the Ogive curve. Okay. So for the Ogive curve, guys, I want to remind you something very important. We use the cumulative frequency. Okay, not the actual frequency. So that is very important. And also, what I need you to note is that we will use these ends as on our horizontal axis. What do I mean? Well, here's what I mean. So we'll have our horizontal axis like this, and they have our vertical one. Let's maybe create some space. Okay. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a 20, I'm going to have a 40, a 60, 80 until we reach 100. Okay. So I'm going to start off with the 0, which will be somewhere here. Then we have a 20, and then a 40, then a 60, then 80, and then 100. Okay, that is what we have. Then what I'm going to do is on the horizontal axis, I'm just going to put up a scale. So if you observe carefully, we need to go up to 14. So what I'm going to say is that we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I'm going to need to push this down. Sorry. No. Let's just focus on this. Let's move it down. And then move all of this down. Right. And let's push this up a bit. Right. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay. So I now have 14 of these. We move it like that. Let me quickly put in the labels there. Okay. So there are our labels, 1 up until 14. So what I need you to note, as I said, I will focus, you will plot using the upper interval of your class restriction. So if you observe carefully, what that means is that at 20, I'm going to be at 0. So 20, we are going to be there at 0. Then at 40, remember, we're using cumulative frequency. At 40, I'm going to be at 6. Okay. So I'm going to go to 6, and then 40, and there we go. That is where we are at. This here is called your Ogive curve. And then let's go to 60. So if you look at 60, we are at 10. Okay. So I'm going to go to 10, quickly draw a dashed line. then go up with 60 like that, and then that is what we are going to have. Okay, and then done with 60, now we can go to 80. So at 80 we have 12. Okay, so that is where we add, and there's 80 there. So 12 we put in that. Then at 100 we have 14, so that's the last one. So at 100 what we are going to have, if you observe carefully, that is 14. Okay, and then what you do there after is to just connect the dots. Okay, and you would be done with your Ogive curve. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do is just connect that. So we just connect it using straight lines. Okay, so we have a straight line from there to there, then another one from there to there, then another one from here to here, and another one from there to there. Okay, so that is our Ogive curve, guys. And with this, we are ready to answer many questions, and you will realize how powerful this is. So now when it comes to the question of Q1, what you need to realize is we need the Ogive curve in order for us to answer this question. Why? It is because Q1, by now we've done introductory statistics. You should know it's 1 over 4 times n plus 1. And remember, n, we showed that it's 14. Okay, so what this means is our Q1 will be 1 over 4 into 14 plus 1. And this will equal to, let's see, so you have 15 divided by 4, which becomes 3.75. Okay, then here's what we are going to do. So what we are going to do is to go and read 3.75 on the cumulative frequency. So this one here is CF, okay, for cumulative frequency. It's very important. So what we are going to do is to go and do the following. We are going to read a frequency or a cumulative frequency of 3.75, and then we go and find the class where this is at, okay, or an approximation. So if you look at the notes that I wrote now, I'm saying read 3.75 on the CF axis, which is cumulative frequency, and then you draw a horizontal line, and then you read the corresponding x value. What do I mean? Well, here's what I mean. What I mean is, if you look at our Q3, it's 3.75. So 3.75, this is not drawn according to scale, so it would be round about here, okay, 3.75, so it's just before 4. So it would be round about here, and then you draw down, okay, and you read the value that we are pointing at there. Okay, so this is not drawn according to scale. Okay, so what I would do is just do an approximation. Okay, so if you look carefully, we know that in the middle here we would have a 30, so I can say that is about 32. So Q1 is approximately 32. Okay, so that is what I found. Okay, this is very important, guys. And then let's go and do Q2. So Q2, which is also known as the median, that what we are going to do is, if you remember, it's 1 over 2 into n plus 1. So that's going to be 1 over 2 to 14 plus 1. And your Q2, you will see that you'll end up finding to be 15 divided by 2, that's 7.5. And remember, what we are finding when using this formula is the position. Okay, that's very important. So I'm going to go and look for 7.5. So 7.5 is between 7 and 8. So draw a line. then you draw another one coming down like that. Okay. So what you would know obviously is that at this point here, you'd be having a 50. So if this was drawn according to scale, you could read a proper value. But here I'm going to say it's probably about 48, okay, Q2. And then we can now go ahead and read Q3, okay. So Q3, you know that it is given by 3 over 4 into n plus 1, which is 3 over 4 to 14 plus 1. And that is going to be, let's quickly do the calculation, 3 over 4 times 15. And that becomes 11.25. Okay. So I'm just going to go just above 11, somewhere there. And then I read the corresponding value down there. Okay. So now if you observe carefully, you'll see that 70 would typically be in the middle. So maybe 70 would be there. So we can say that maybe that is 72. Okay. So we can say Q3 is about 72 marks or 72%. So that is how you're going to approximate these things, guys. It does not get any more complicated than this here. What you should note, obviously, is your maximum. It will be what is there. So if you look at your maximum, it will be your 100. Okay, that's the maximum mark which can be gotten. But that is the problem with group statistics. You've now lost the fact that the highest person was actually 92. It has been grouped, and it's not very hard to be able to tell by being given group data that of this range here, what was the highest mark. Okay. So I hope that you guys do understand what is happening here. So with this in mind, we can go now and have a look at a couple of questions that will help us to understand the concepts even further. So let's take this question as an example. Question 1. So this reads, 50 shoppers were asked what percentage of their income they spend on groceries. 6 answered they spend between 10 and 19% inclusive, and that is summarized as follows. Okay. And then now we are asked for the first question. So maybe let's have a look at this. So if we look at the barbers, how much they spend on their groceries. So you'll see that 6 of them said they spend between 10 and 19, and 14 of them said between 20 and 29. Then 16 said between 30 and 39%, and above 50 but less than 59, it was only 3 people who said they spend that amount of money on their grocery. Okay. So with this in mind, let's have a look at the question. So the first one says, calculate the mean percentage of family income allocated to groceries. So if you look at A, what they are looking for is for mean. And remember that what we are working with here is grouped data. Okay. And for the mean, X, what we said is we'll be summing the frequency times the midpoint, then we divide by n. Okay. So I have the frequency of this data, so it means I need to find the midpoint. So now the question is, what is MP? So remember, MP is for the midpoint. What is it? So what I'm going to do is to quickly write up this table. So this is our percentage here, and if you look at our frequency, let's quickly note it down. So you have 6, and then you have 14, and then we have 16, we have 11, then we have 3. So for the midpoint, remember guys, You take this, you add it with that and divide by 2. So let me quickly note it for you for the last time. So if you look at your midpoint, for the first one, you'll do 10 plus 19 divided by 2. And that will be, so let me see, 19 plus 10, that is divided by 2. So you get 14.5. Okay, so what we can do is we can go and put 14.5. Okay, 14.5. So that is how you solve for that. Okay, and then we can go to the next one where we look at that. So you'll see that your midpoint is simply 20 plus 29 divided by 2. So let's see, 20 plus 29 divided by 2. What you end up getting is 24.5. Okay, then you come here, 24.5. Okay, then we go to the next one where you'll have 30 plus 39, and that should be divided by 2. And you will see that the answer which you end up getting is 34.5. Okay, so what I did there was just MP, the midpoint, that is 30 plus 39 divided by 2, that gives you 34.5. Okay, then the next one, which is 40 plus 49, that is divided by 2. You will see that you will get 44.5. Okay, that is our other midpoint. Then we'll have 50 plus 59. That should be divided by 2. And we end up having 54.5. Okay, that becomes our midpoint. Remember, what we need is the frequency times the midpoint. So we'll have frequency times midpoint. Okay, so I'm going to go and quickly deal with those. And here, let me see if I can grab a color here. Let's use that. So I'll have 6 multiplied by 14.5. Okay, and that gives us 87. Then I'm going to have 14 multiplied by 24.5, and that gives us 343. Then we have 16 multiplied by 34.5, and that gives us 552. Okay, then we have 11 multiplied by 44.5, and that becomes 489.5. And then we have 3 multiplied by 54.5, and that gives us 163.5. Okay, so what I'm going to do, since I need the mean, I need the n, and I need the total sum here. So if we do the sum here, you'll see that we'll have 6 plus 14 plus 16 plus 11 plus 3, and what we end up getting is 50. Okay, then if we do the other sum there, that's 87 plus 343 plus 552 plus 489.5, then plus 163.5. And then this becomes a total of 1635. Okay, so this means now I can find our mean. And our mean, which is denoted by that, it will simply be 1635 divided by 50. And this will be, the answer we end up getting is about 32.7. So what does this mean if we now go back to answering the question? So the question was, calculate the mean percentage family income allocated to groceries. So our answer can be 32.7% is the mean income allocated to groceries. So that is how we figure out our, what you call it, our mean. Okay, now the next question requires us to figure out the median. Okay, so let's go for this question. So question B, it wants the median. Sorry, it wants the median. And remember, the median is Q2. What is Q2? So what we are going to do is to go to the next page. And remember, for Q2, we said we require that we have the cumulative frequency. So let's create space. So let's go ahead and cook. So what you should remember is that for Q2, we need CF, okay? And that is your cumulative frequency. So let me take the table on the previous question and then show you how we are going to figure out our cumulative frequency, okay? It's very simple, guys. All of you should make sure that you do fetch all of these marks. It's very straightforward questions. So we have the frequency. So now we are going to have the cumulative frequency. Okay. So remember, with cumulative frequency, what we are going to do is we are going to start off with whatever that is here. So that is going to be 6. Then for the next one, we are going to add what we see here with what we have previously to get the next one, which then becomes 20, okay? 6 plus 14. Then to get the next one, we take the 20, we add it to the 16 in order for us to get the next number. And if you observe carefully, 20 plus 16, that should be 36, okay? And then we continue. We take the 36, we go to the 11, we add them. So if you go and say 36 plus 11, you should be able to see that you get 47, okay? Then we do the same, 47 with 3. So you just add 3 to 47. What you end up getting is 50, okay? So we end up getting 50. So now that we have 50, what we are going to do is we are going to go and draw the Ogive curve, because we need the cumulative frequency and then the Ogive curve. Okay, so let's go ahead and plot our Ogive curve, guys. So I have what? To 50. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so this is what we have, and what I'm going to do is the following. So I'm going to have my classes. Remember, we said we use the upper bound, so that means I'm going to have 19 somewhere, then I'm going to have 29. We try that again. So I'm going to have 19, then 29, then 39, then 49, and then 59. Okay, done with that. And then what will follow next is for us to quickly put up these numbers here. So we have 6 up to 50. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to step in steps of 5. Okay, so I'm going to have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. So that means I have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55. Then the last one becomes 60. Okay, good enough. So let's go ahead now and do our plots. Remember, we're using cumulative frequency. So at 19, it's going to be at 6. Okay, so 6 is just above 5. Okay, so that means we're going to be pure, right? And then at 29, we're going to be at 20. So if we go, 20 is here, and 29. So we have a point here. And then at 39, we have 36. So I'm going to go and look for 36, which is just above 35. So we draw that. Then we go up. Becomes somewhere there. Okay. Then at 49, you will see that we have 47. So we have 45. 47 is somewhere, just close to midway between 45 and 50. So that's our 49. So we have a point here. Okay. Then 59, you'll see that we have 50. So here's 50 here. And then 59 goes up like that. So that is what we have. So now we can go ahead and quickly connect our graph, okay, our curve. So straight line between these 2 points, straight line between these 2 points. Let's see. Right, and then let's go to the next one. Straight line between these ones, and then straight line between these ones. So this is obviously not drawn according to scale here, guys. You will be given a graph, what you would call it, paper. So that will make it to be way easier to be able to do proper plotting here. So now let's go back to our problem. So remember, we're looking for Q2. Okay. So remember, we're looking for Q2. So what you know, Q2, which is the median, is that it's given by 1 over 2 into n plus 1. So I want you to remember that whenever we're working with cumulative frequency, the number that sits there becomes n. So our n becomes 50. So we'll go ahead and do our calculation knowing that n is 50. So what this means is that our Q2 will be half of 50 plus 1, and this will be equal to, so if you observe carefully, 51 divided by 2, which is 25.5. Okay. So what we are going to do now is to trace the 25.5 on the CF axis. So remember that the vertical axis, that's CF, cumulative frequency, and then this one we have X on the horizontal one. So now I need to go and look for 25.5. So that is very close to 25. So it's something that is like this. Let's see if we can get a straight line. So it's very close to 25. And then we go down. Okay. So if you observe carefully, you will see that between the two numbers, we have 10 points. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So if you observe carefully, that you could be okay if you were to say it's 29 plus 3. So essentially round about 32 or 33. So if you observe carefully, according to my scale, I can say that Q2 is approximately, let's say, 33. Okay. That is what is happening. So our median is approximately 33, or one can say 32. It's very close to 32. So maybe let's take 32. It's about 32%. Okay. If you observe carefully, this is very close to our mean, right? So they are asking us, in which interval does the mean lie? So they didn't ask us for the exact mean, but where does it lie? So if you look carefully, it lies within this interval here. So it is after 29, but before 39. So the answer to our question is that the mean lies in the interval. If if you observe carefully, it's the one less than 39. So we can say the mean lies in the interval. If you look at that interval, it's the interval x is less than 39, but greater than 30. Okay, so that is our answer, guys. So I do hope that it does make sense to you. So now we are asked for number C to determine the mode percentage of income spent on groceries. So let's have a look at this here, where they're asking us about the mode percentage. So remember, what this represents is the percentage. So we need to look at the frequency. Which frequency is the highest here? And if you look carefully, it is 16. So it means the modal class, they would call it also that way, is that one. So our answer is x is greater than 30 but less than 39. Okay. So if you observe carefully, you'll see that our modal class is the one where you have x bigger than 30 but less than 39. Okay. So that there is our answer to this question that we are given on number C. Okay. So I hope that you guys understand all these questions that we did here, and you are becoming more confident with the concepts. So with that said, let's go and have a look at another question. And this is the question that we are going to be looking at, and it reads, this is going to be our question 2. A company interviewed 700 university students to determine at which age they got their licenses. Below are the findings. Okay. So we have people who are between 18 and 20, it's 142, and so on and so forth. Okay. So for A, we are required to determine the modal group. Okay. We are required to figure out what is the modal group. And remember, once they speak of modal group or modal class, we need to ask ourselves which group has the highest frequency. Okay, that is the question that you should ask yourself. Now, if you look at these groups, you'll see that the highest frequency is 282. And this is for people aged 20, between 20, inclusive of 20, but less than 22. So this means our answer here, if that modal group is simply x is greater or equal to 20, but less than 22. Okay. And then what we are required to do is to draw the histogram of this data. So let's go ahead for B and draw our histogram. Okay. There's something that I need you to note about the histogram, which is that for the histogram, we are going to use the frequency that we have and the midpoint. Okay. But we really don't even need to go to the midpoint. We can easily draw it without having the midpoint. Okay. So maybe let's just leave the frequency only. So let's go ahead and have a look at our histogram. So we'll have our vertical axis. And on our vertical axis, what we are going to have is our frequency. So we're going to have our frequency. So that's what we are going to have. So let's move this. So it's our frequency, which we have here. Okay. And then let's go ahead and sort out something here, which is the actual plotting. So you will see that what we have is 81, and then we have 195, and then we have 280 something, then 142. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use, a scale. And what I'm going to do is to use 50s. Okay. So here's how it's going to go. So let's move this down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a 50 here, then 100 here, and then a 150 here, and then a 200 here, and then a 250 here, and then a 300. Okay, so this works out. You can have values in between, and then now we can go ahead and quickly put up what we have here. So I'm going to have 18 at the starting point. So okay, can't move that down, but I can move this up. Right. So where we start, I'm going to start off with 18. Well, let's start off with 0. Then what I'm going to have is 18, and then 20, then 22, then 24, and then lastly 26. Okay, so if you observe carefully, that is age. Okay, and that is frequency. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this point here. So we had 142 for students that are between 18 and 20. So what you do is you find the mid value here, and then we are going to go and try and map it to 142. So if you think carefully, we have 100, then we're going to have a 125. So 142 is very close to 150. Okay, so it's somewhere here. The middle, I'm going to draw that dot there. Okay, and then for between 20 and 22, the middle again, I'll go up. So we have 280 something. So this would be plus 25. That would make it 275. So very close to 300. Okay. So that is where we have our point. Then between 22 and 24, we have 195. So that is very close to 200. Okay. It's very close to 200. So I'm going to put it there. Then 24 to 26, we have 81. Okay, so in the middle, so we have 100. So here it's going to be 75. So 85 is somewhere around about there. So this is not drawn according to scale, and that is what we have. So now, how do we finalize all of this? Well, it's very simple. What I'm going to do, move like this, stop there, go down at 20. Okay, so that is what we have. And then for the next one, go up here, go down, come down at 22. Okay, that's about correct. And then for the next one, go here, come down here, like that. Then for the next one, we go down like that. Okay, so that is what we end up having, guys. It becomes this simple. If you apply yourself, you will see that you will easily be able to draw these histograms. So that becomes our answer for question B. Okay. Then they are saying we should draw the frequency polygon of the of the data. So all what they are saying here, remember we're looking at the center value, the center values. So for the polygon, let's copy this. Now we're looking at question number 6. So I'm just going to draw a line. Okay. So all what I need to do is to just connect all of these using a line. That's it. It's nothing deep. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to use a red one. So I'm going to connect that and that. And then this and this. And then this and that. Sorry. This and that. Okay. So that is about what we have. And I hope that this does make sense. So lastly, at 18, we are just going to go and put it down. Okay. Just going to go down, and then it goes down like that. In fact, it should go down somewhere there. And then let's quickly move this one here. Snap. Okay, let's delete it. So it's gonna be remove. Right. So it's gonna be that, and it's gonna be that. Okay. So I hope that this does make sense and that answers your question. So now for D, we are required to go and draw the Ogive curve, or others would say the Ogive curve. So let's create some space. So let's go ahead, our space is up, and draw the Ogive curve. And remember that for the Ogive curve, what we need is cumulative frequency. Okay. So let's go ahead and ensure that we do have cumulative frequency. So what I'm going to do is to quickly rewrite this table that we have here on the next page. So our table is done and ready. So now what we can do is we can now put up our cumulative frequency. So remember, the first entry is always the same. So what we're going to have is 142. Okay. Then for the next one, what you do is you take the 142, you add it with what we see there, then that is how you get the cumulative frequency. So it becomes 142 plus 282, and that becomes 424. Okay. And then for the next one, then we take the 424, we'll go and add it with this 195. Okay. And that is how we get the next number, which is 619, right? Then let's go for the next one, which if you observe carefully, it's the 619, we added 281, okay? So plus 81, and what we end up getting is 700, okay? And guess what? What we see here speaks to n. So your n will be 700. Okay. Now with this out of the way, we can go ahead and do our plot. Okay. So let's quickly put up our axis here. So we're going to have our vertical axis and our horizontal axis. That. Right, so we are going to have a 0, and then if you observe carefully, we are then going to have an 18. So we're going to have 18, and then 20, then 22, then 24, then 26. Okay, so here what we are dealing with is age, essentially x. So let's just make some space to ensure that we do label here. So what we are dealing with there on the horizontal axis is simply age. Okay. And then what we have on the vertical axis, that's CF, that is cumulative frequency, right? So let's make some space for our scale here. So if you observe carefully, we need to move from 100 up until we get to that value which is there, which is 700. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to use a scale of 150. So if I have 150, then 300, and then 450. Let me see. So if I have 150, I'm going to 300, and then I go to 450, then I go to 600. Okay, that will work. So let's have 150, 300, 450, and then the next one is going to be 600, and then we get to 750. Okay, so this is what I'm going to use as my scale. Not very good, but yeah, but hopefully it's going to be good enough. Okay, so let's have a look then. So for 20, remember we said we always use the side here. So for 20, we have 142. So if you think carefully, midway here we're at 75. So 142 is very close to 150. Okay, so at 20, we're there, right? And then at 22, we're at 425. So we are just below 450, essentially. 425 is just below 450. So we go there. There we go. Then we have now at 24, we have 619. So that is just above 600. Okay, so we have that. And then at 26, we have 700. So if you think about it carefully, 700 is somewhere here. Okay, it's just below 750. So that becomes our 700. So we can now connect our graph and be happy. So let's go and do so. This and that. Then this and that. And this and that. Okay. So that is how our Ogive curve is going to look. So you can finish it up by doing that. So I hope that it does make sense to you guys. It's a very simple graph if you think about it carefully, right? Then maybe just for the previous one, when they were asking about the polygon, what you actually need to do is to go and delete, yeah, that histogram there, okay? And that is what we are going to have. So that is our Ogive curve done. Now let's have a look. So they're saying we need to, number E, determine Q1. So we have E. So we have E Roman figure 1. And the answer is, what is Q1? So what I'm going to do is to quickly find the position of this. So remember, N is 700. So we have 700 plus 1. And that is going to be 701 divided by 4. So that becomes 175.25. Okay. So were they looking for the class here? No, they're looking for the exact value. Okay. So what we are going to do is we are going to look for this value that we've just calculated here. So let me rewrite it. What we found was 175.25. Okay. So let's go ahead and figure it out here. So if you remember, between 300 and 150, sorry, midway you have 175. Okay, that is what you have. Okay, so our 175 will be somewhere, say here, and then we go down there. Okay, so if you observe carefully, one can argue and say, yeah, we're looking at about 21 here. Okay, so someone else would just say, therefore, for Q1 is 21. Okay, and this is just from the scale that I'm using here. It's obviously maybe not correct, but yeah, it's the scale that I'm using here. Okay, so there we go, guys. It's just above 20, so we can put it at 21. And then now let's go to Roman figure number 2, where they are asking about Q2. So Q2 will be 1 over 2 into 700 plus 1. So we are going to have 701 divided by 2. And that is going to be about 350.5. Okay. So we erase that and just make it purple. So what we have is 350.5. So that's the position. So if you note carefully, 350 is somewhere in between these here. So my scale is actually not correct. I'm missing. No, it is correct. So 350 is somewhere here. Okay. And if you observe carefully, at our 350, we are very close to 22. Okay. So at 350. So if you had drawn this according to scale, you would have a good read. So our Q2, I'm going to say maybe it's 21 point. It's definitely above 21. So maybe I would say 21.7. Okay. As an example. And then we can now go and look at our, so median. Q2 is the median, okay? So we're done now figuring out our median. And then what is next is the third quartile. So that is Q3, okay? 2, 3. So we're looking for Q3. So for Q3, we're going to have 3 over 4 into 700 plus 1. So let's go ahead, 3 divided by 4 multiplied by 701. That becomes 525.75. Okay. So let's go ahead and deal with that. So 525 should be somewhere here. Let's make it to be green. So it should be, if you look carefully, you have 450. So you would have a 50 that would make it to be 500 and then 550, if you think about it. So it means what we are looking at is just about somewhere there. Okay. Okay. That is what we have. So if they're looking for the exact value or an approximation, we would give them exactly what we read there. So our Q3, that would be approximately, it's above 22 and it's about midway. So I would say it's about 23. Okay. So that is how we do the reading of these here, guys. So I hope that you do understand what is happening here. And then just in case we're asked to figure out what is the mean, let's say they then ask us what is the mean, you would need to remember the mean is the sum of the frequency times the midpoint, okay? And this would be divided by n. So that you can go and quickly figure out, because you can calculate the midpoint using these two values here. So with this in mind, I hope you understand. Let's move to the next question, okay? And this is question number 3. So question number 3, if you look carefully, it comes from the May-June 2019 exam, and that was question 1. So we are told that each child in a group of 4-year-old children was given the same puzzle to complete. The time taken in minutes by each child to complete the puzzle is shown below. So now we are asked how many children completed the puzzle. Okay, let's have a look at 1.1. Okay, so they completed at various times, but how many of them completed? So we can go ahead and find the total number of the children by simply summing the frequencies. So children, that will just be the sum of the frequencies. So that means I'm going to have 2 plus 10 plus 9 plus 7, if you just look above, plus 8 plus 7 plus 2. So I'm going to go to my calculator, quickly put this up. 2 and 10 and 9 and 7 and 8 and 7 and 2. So what I'm getting is 45. Okay, we see 8272. Okay, that's it. So that is the value that we are supposed to get. It's supposed to be 45. Okay, so we have 45 children who completed the puzzle. So the answer is 45 children completed the puzzle. Okay, so I hope this does make sense. And then we are required to calculate the estimated mean time taken to complete the quiz. So 1.2, they're looking for the mean. And we know that for the mean, we need the midpoint, guys. We need the midpoint, okay? So what I'm going to do is to quickly rewrite our table just here. So let's go ahead, guys, now and look at the midpoint. So for the midpoint, we do 6 plus 2 divided by 2. And if you think of that carefully, it's going to be 4. And then we do 10 plus 6 divided by 2. That is going to be 8. And then we do 14 plus 10. That is going to be 24. Divided by 2. That is going to be 12. Okay. And then you do 14 plus 18. That is going to be 32. You divide by 2, you get 16. And then you do 18 and 22, you get 40. You divide by 2, you get 20. So if you can look carefully, you are increasing in 4s. So expecting a 24 here and a 28. Let's double check. 30 plus 26 divided by 2, indeed you get 28. Okay, so all what we did here for our midpoint is simply to take the 14 and the 18, then you divide by 2, and that is how you get these values. Okay, so that is how there we got 16. So now what we need is the frequency times the midpoint, okay, because we need that sum. So if you look carefully, we have 2 times 4, which is going to give you 8. Then you have 10 times 8, that is going to give you 80. You have 9 times 12, that is going to give you 108. And then you have 7 times 16, that is going to give you 112. Then you have 8 times 20, that is going to give you 160. Then you have 7 by 24, that is going to give you 168. Then you have 2 by 28, and that is going to give you 56. So what I'm going to do is to sum this and sum that. So the sum of these frequencies, which is the number of learners, that's going to be 45. Okay. Then we can sum the other part. So we'll have 8 plus 80 plus 108 plus 112 plus 160 plus 168 plus 56. Then what we end up getting is 692. Okay. So now we can find the mean. So our mean is going to be 692 all divided by 45. Okay. And this is going to be 15.38. Okay. So that is the mean which we end up getting. Okay. So remember that your mean is always given by your sum of your frequency times your midpoint divided by n. That's the definition. So if you observe carefully, our mean time taken to complete the puzzle is 15.38. So the answer, we can therefore say the mean time taken to complete the puzzle is that. So the time taken to complete the puzzle, or the mean time, it will be 15.38 minutes. So we're done with that. Let's go to 1.3, where we are required to complete the cumulative frequency column. Okay, so that is 1.3. So let's create some space. So let's go and have a look at 1.3, where we are required to figure out what is the cumulative frequency. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to take the table that we already have here, and we just go and populate our cumulative frequency. So we already have our frequency, so let's go and cook our cumulative frequency. So you will need another column, which is your cumulative frequency. Okay, so let's see how it goes. So with your cumulative frequency, I've said it a couple of times already, that the first part, let me move this. So I said it, the first part, this one here just becomes 2, okay? And then now, when we're looking for the second part, you take the 2, you add it with the 10, and that is how we get this part here. So that becomes 12, okay? And then we do exactly the same thing. You take the 12, you add it with the 9, that is how you get the next one. So you now have 12 plus 9, that becomes 21. And then now what you do is you take the 21, you add it to the 7, and that is how you get the next one. So you have 21 plus 7, that becomes 28. Okay, so you end up having 28. And then we continue doing exactly the same thing. You now take the 28 and the 8, you add them together. So that's plus 8, and that becomes 36. Okay, and then we now take 36, exactly the same thing. You add a 7, and that is how you get the last number. So plus 7, and what we end up getting is 43. Okay, so we end up getting 43. So now I need to go and revisit my numbers here. So why am I getting 43 there? So I have 2 plus 10 plus 9 plus 7 plus 8 plus 7 plus 2, and I'm getting 45. So why am I getting 43? Oh, I'm not done actually. Okay, so let's go. We have the 43 that we need to add with the 2, and that gives us 45. Okay, so that is what we have, guys. 45. So let's go now and cook. So number 4.1, we are required to draw the Ogive curve. Remember, they can call the Ogive curve the cumulative frequency graph. Okay, so let's go ahead. 1.4. What we are required to do is to draw the Ogive, or others would say Ogive curve, however way you pronounce it. You get the point, isn't it? So let's cook. So we'll have that. These are going to be our axes, right? So if you observe carefully, so what we are going to do is to have a 2. Let's not have that. We're going to have a 2 and then have a 6. And then if you observe carefully, have a 10, then 14, 18, 22, and then 26, and then 30. Okay, so that is what we are going to have. And this here speaks to the time taken, okay? So they do mark these headings. So that's our time taken. Then let's figure out our scale on the vertical axis. So on the vertical axis, what we're going to have is our scale is we're going to have a 5, 10, and then 15, 20, then 25, 30, then 35, 40, and then 45. Okay. So with this in mind, we can now go ahead and plot our Ogive curve. So let's go ahead. Remember, we'll use the last numbers here. Okay, so we'll use 6. So 6 goes with 2. So if you think carefully, halfway here, it's about 2.5. So 2 should just be below here. Okay. And then now we go to 10, and 10 is at 12. So if you observe carefully, you have a 15. So 12 is somewhere right about there. Okay. So you have a 12 somewhere here. And then we have a 14. I'm just going to draw some dashed line. And 14 is going with 21. Okay. So 21 is just above 20. So it should be there. Right. And then we go into now 18. So let's go up. So with 18, if you look carefully, we're at 28. And 28 is just below 30. So it should be something like that. Then we go into 22. So if you look at 22, it is at 36. So just above 35. Okay. So that means that is where we at. And then we can now go to 26. So if you look at 26, you will see that it's at 33, and 33, if you think carefully, it's 2.5 here. So 33 is just right about there. Okay. There. And then now if you observe carefully, the last one, which is 30, that is at 45. Okay. So that is there. Okay, so that is about what you were expected to be able to do for this here. So now what I need to do is to just connect these lines here. So that should connect with that, that with that, this one with this one, this one with this one, and that one with that one, and this one with that one. Okay, so that becomes our Ogive curve. And what you need to remember, on the vertical axis, that is our cumulative frequency. Okay, so I hope that that does make sense, and we are done. So they're saying using the graph, or use the graph to determine the median time taken to complete the puzzle. So if you observe carefully, 1.5, they want the median time. So that is essentially Q2. Okay. So Q2, we know that it's half of n plus 1, which will be half of 45, plus 1, which will be equal to 2, that's the same as 46, divided by 2, which will be 23. Okay, so we're done. So now what we are going to do is to go and look for 23. Okay, close this bracket here. Let's use, did we use pink? Okay, not so much blue. So let's just use the blue here, or maybe this red. So what we end up getting is 23. So I'm going to fetch this Ogive curve, and then we figure out where is 23. Copy. And remember, because you have a graph paper, you would have drawn this according to scale. So shouldn't really worry about the readings a lot. So if you observe carefully, we're looking forward 23. So we're at 20. So here we're at 22.5. Okay. So 23 will just be about there. Okay. That. And then go down like that. Okay. So that is our 23. Now, if you observe carefully, you can split what we have here into 3. So remember that if you do 18 minus 14, you will see that you have about 4 values. So you could have 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th one. Okay, you can move this a bit closer. But what you would see is that this is about 15 here. So let's try that again. So what I would do, I would have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that looks about evenly spread, because you're going to have 15, 16, 17. In fact, so it means I need to split these more, like that, like that. Yeah. So you're 15, 16, 17, 18. So what I would do is I would approximate our Q2 to be that. Okay. So if you look at the value down there, you will then see that our Q2 is approximately 15. Okay, approximately 15 minutes. So we can therefore give our answer to this question and say that Q2 is approximately 15 minutes. So meaning the median time taken to complete the puzzle is 15 minutes. So this here becomes our answer to this question. So I hope that you do and are able to make sense of these questions here. And that was our answer to question 1.5. Okay. So next, we are required to have a look at this question here, and this is from the 2018 November exam. So let's quickly answer these questions. So for question 4, we're given our Ogive curve, and we are required to write down the total number of food items ordered. So what you should remember is that the total number, you actually find it here. So what we see there, which is 140, that becomes the total number. Okay. So 1.1.1. So what we see here, that becomes our total number. Okay. So the total number of food items ordered will be 140. So that is our answer, guys, 140. And then what we are required to do is to write down the model class of the data. So let's have a look at the next question, which is 1.1.2, where we are required to determine the model class of the data. So there's a couple of ways that you can deal with this, and how we are going to figure out the model class when given the Ogive curve. What we are going to do is look at the slope. Okay, so what we want to do is, if you look at the slope, the steepest part or the steepest group is the group that has the modal class, because it means from there we added the biggest number. So the most steep group is the modal group. Okay, so this thinking here is very foundational in figuring out the answer. So if you look at the slope here, it is less, and then between this one it is increasing, then it has increased, then if you look carefully the slope is decreasing. So the slope is at maximum, or it is steeper between these 2 points, between these ones here. So that is why our modal class will be our x value being between 20 and 30. So what we are going to say is that our answer for this, which is our modal class, that's going to be x inclusive of 30, but excluding 20. Okay, very important. I hope that you guys understand. Then let's have a look at 1.1.3. So we are asked, how long did it take to order the first 30 food items? Okay, so let's figure out here. So if we go to 30, if we go to the first 30 food items, which is, let me use pink. So if we go at 30, I don't want the highlighter, my apologies. Let's get the pen. So if we go at 30, so there's our 30, you'll see that when we go down, that is what we see. So to order the first 30 items, we took 20 minutes. Okay, so that is our answer. So if you look carefully, we can therefore say that our answer is, if you look at our graph, that in pink there, it is 20 minutes. Okay, so this is the time taken to order the first 30 items. Okay, and then we are asked how many food items were ordered in the last 15 minutes. Okay, so we need to think carefully about this one here. So let's read again. How long, so they're looking for time, did it take? How long did it take to order sorry, how many food items were ordered in the last 15 minutes? So we need to ask ourselves, what is the last 15 minutes? Okay. So now, if you think carefully, the total time that we are going to take is 60 minutes. So let's think about our answer. Let me quickly note down. So we're solving 1.1.4. So if you observe carefully, we can look at the total time, which is 60 minutes. So what we want to do is to take the 60 minutes there and minus 15 to get the actual time, because they are saying in the last 15 minutes. So our time is going to be 60 minus 15, which is going to be 60 minus 50, 15, that should be 45 minutes. Okay, so it means we should go to the 45-minute mark and then figure out how many items we ordered. So let's go ahead. What I'm going to do is to go at the 45-minute mark. Okay, so if you observe carefully, let me think. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's about 45. So let's go ahead. So 45 is about there. Okay, that's about 45. Then what I can do is to trace it this side like that. Okay, so now if you observe carefully, we can now do a reading for what is happening here, because what you have is your 120. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you observe carefully, so this means it's moving in twos. So that's 21, 22, 24, 26. Okay, so that is 26. So if you observe carefully, our answer there is at 126. So in the last 15 minutes, we had ordered 126 items. Okay, so now if you observe carefully, we can go ahead and present our answer, and that is we ordered 126 items, sorry, items in the last 15 minutes. Okay, so that is what you were expected to do, guys. I really hope that this does make some sense. Okay, it's very important that you understand every step that we do undertake as part of solving this problem here. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's go and have a look at the next question then. And that is question 1 point. Let's erase this. So it's 1.1.5. Okay, so we are asked to determine the 75th percentile of the data. So we should know that 75 percentile, all what it is Q3. Okay, so they are saying we should determine where Q3 is. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to copy this and go to the next page. Let's create some space. So let's go ahead and figure out, let's copy this diagram here. What we want to do is to figure out what is Q3. But remember that Q3 is just 3 over 5, which is where the 75 comes from, into n plus 1. So this will be, 3 over 4 into, we found the total number food items to be 140. So it's 140 plus 1. So let's go and see. So we have 3 over 4 multiplied by 141. And that becomes 105 point, if you observe carefully, 75. Okay. So now what we need to do is we need to go and read this here, because Q3 is 105.75. So we need to go and read this, and then after reading it, it will become easier to be able to read what is happening here. So, right, let's go ahead and look for 17105. Okay. So if you observe carefully on the cumulative curve, what we will have is, remember we're moving in steps of 2. Okay. So it means at 100, you'll have 102, 104, 106. So meaning 105 is somewhere in between. Okay. So this will be 106, 108, and then 110. Okay. So it means we need to look, this is 2, 4, 6. So somewhere here. Let's make it small. So where we need to look is right about here. Just move in the middle, okay, until we get there. And then we just move down like that. Right. So that is what we have. Let's move it to that line. Yes. So that is what we have. So now I just need to go and figure out how to read this. And if you observe carefully, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this is going in steps of 1. Okay. So what are we going to have? 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37. Okay. So that is what we are able to read, 37. So our answer to this question is, what was the question? Determine the 75th percentile. So what we can say is that the 75th percentile, if you observe carefully, is 37 minutes. That's it. So that is what they were expected to be able to do for this question. So I hope that this does make sense to you guys. Then we are going to go and calculate the interquartile range. Okay. So remember, for the interquartile range, what we need is Q1, and then we also need Q3. Okay. We're looking for IQR. So that is 1.1.6. 1.1.6. So what they are looking for is the interquartile range, which is given by Q3 minus Q1. Okay, what is it? So what I have not found here is our Q1. So our Q1 is given by 1 over 4 into n plus 1, which is 1 over 4 into 140 plus 1. And this is going to be, let's see, 1 over 4 into 141. So that is going to be about 35.25. Okay. So what I'm going to do is to go ahead and look for this 35 of ours. About 35. Okay. So if you observe carefully, you should remember we're moving in steps of 2. Okay. So this means we have 32, 34, and we have what, 35 there. And then 34, then that becomes 36. So 35 should just be in the, just about the middle. Okay, if we erase the last one, or 35 should be just about there. Okay. Let me put up the straight line. So it will be right about here. Okay. And then we go down here. So that is what we are getting. And if you observe carefully, remember these are steps of 1. So what we see there is 21. So I can go ahead now and approximate therefore our Q3. So our Q1 is approximately 21. Okay. And our Q3 in blue is approximately 37. So now I can go ahead and find our interquartile range. So let's note that that is interquartile range. Okay. So that is what IQR stands for. So our IQR will therefore be 37 minus 21. And 37 minus 21 gives us about 16. So we can therefore say our answer, so our IQR interquartile range is 16 minutes. Okay. So that is what we have. Okay. So I hope that this does make sense to you guys and you actually understand. So that is how we would do this question here, 1.1.6. So let's go now and have a look at another question. It's very important that when you finish this lesson, you understand exactly how do we deal with these problems, right? So let's go. So the next question is this one, question 5, and this is from the November 2019 paper. Okay, guys, let's quickly have a look or a read and then wrap up this question. So for question 2, the statement is a survey was conducted among, just forgive the noise, it's an airplane. A survey was conducted among 100 people about the amount that they paid on a monthly basis for their cell phone contracts. The person carrying out the survey calculated the estimated mean to be 309 per month. Unfortunately, they lost some of the data thereafter. The spatial results in the surveys are as shown in the frequency table below. So now we are asked, how many people paid 200 or less on their cell phone contracts? Okay, so 200 or less, if you observe carefully, this is between 100 and 200, and this is between 0 and 100. So it would be this and that. Okay, very simple. So if we look at 2.1, you will see that our answer would simply be, we need to do 7 plus 12, which would give you 19. So what we can say is 19 people pay 200 rands or less. Okay, very simple one. Now let's go to the next one, 2.2. So if we look at 2.2, we are required to use the information above to figure out or to show that A is equal that and B is equal 16. So we need to think carefully here. So the first thing, we know that our total is equal to 100 people. So what does this mean? it means that if I say 7 plus 12 plus A plus 35 plus B plus 6, I should get 100. Now, if you observe carefully, that ends up giving you A plus B. So I'm just going to combine all the other numbers, which is going to be 7 plus 12 plus 35 and then plus 6. So that becomes 60. So this is plus 60, that becomes 100, is equal 100. So we can transpose the 60 such that we end up having this expression. We end up having an expression where we have A plus B equaling 40. Okay. And this here, I'm going to call it equation number 1. So we've used the total. Now what I need to do is to use the mean. Okay. So I'm told that the mean is 309. So we are told that. And we know that for group data, the mean is always given by the sum of the frequency multiplied by the midpoint. And all of this will be divided by n. Okay. Now, if you observe carefully, we can go ahead, when you look at our table here, let's quickly copy and paste it, and then just extend the table a bit to include the midpoint. Let's see if we can crop this. Right, let's crop it a bit this side. Okay, so if you observe carefully, we can therefore go ahead and extend this here to have another column where we're looking at our midpoint. Okay, so I'm just going to have something like this here. Then let's have that, and then close it here. Okay, so what I want to do here is to put the midpoint. So I'm looking at MP, and remember, you add this and this, and then you divide by 2 by 2. Okay, so that's going to be 50. If you think carefully, then we're going to have 100 plus 200 divided by 2. That's going to be 150. Then you are going to have 200 plus 300. Then you divide that by 2. That's going to be 250. Then you have 300 plus 400. All of that divided by 2. That's going to be 350. You can take a guess. That's going to be 450 and 550. Okay, let's double check. 500 plus 600 divided by 2. That's 550. That's okay. So now that we have the midpoint, then we can go ahead and multiply with the respective frequency to equate to our mean. So this means that 309 will simply be equal to, if you observe carefully, 50 by 7 plus 12 by 150, then plus A by 250, and then plus, if you observe carefully, 35 by 350, and then plus B by 450, and then plus 6 by 550, and all of this will be divided by 100. Okay, so what we can do is to go to the next page and work this out. Remember, we're looking for A and B. Okay, and if you think about this carefully, it's going to amount to simultaneous equations at the end of the day, right? So if we multiply by 100 on both sides, you will see that we'll end up having 309 and then 00, and this will become the first term. If you observe carefully, it will be 350. So you'll have your 350 there. Then the second term, which is 12 by 150, which I'll double check, that becomes 1,800. So that becomes 1,800. And then the other term becomes 250 times A. Okay. And then we have plus, you have 35 times 350. That becomes 12,250. And then plus 450 times B. So we have 450 times B. Then plus you have 6 times 550, which is 3,300. Okay. So if you observe carefully, you'll see that we'll have 250A plus 450B equaling, so you'll have 30900 minus 350 minus 1,800 minus 12,250 minus 3,300. And this here will give us 13,200. Okay. And this here, what we can do, guys, we can call it equation number 2. How's that? Okay. Very nice. So we now have equation 1 and 2. So let me go and fetch equation 1, which is that. Now, what we need to do, if you observe carefully, we just need to solve this simultaneous equation. So that is what it has become. Okay. So what we can do is we can use equation 1 to start off this. So use 1. So from equation 1, what I'm going to do is to make A to be equal to the subject, where it's 40 minus B. Okay. So what this means is that I'm going to have 250. Now into wherever I see A, I'm going to put 40 minus B. Then plus 450B equals 13,200. Okay. Then you'll see that we'll have 250 multiplying 40, which will end up giving us 10,000 minus 250B, and then plus 450B. And this is 13,200. So if we quickly sort this out on the side, the greens, and then collect the pinks, what you will see is that you'll have 450 minus 250, which will end up giving you 200. So you'll have 200B equals, you'll have your 13,200 minusing 10,000. And that will give you 3,200. Okay. And then what we can do is to do some division. Okay. So what we can do, divide by 200, divide by 200. And if you observe carefully, you'll have your B equaling. So you have 3,200 divided by 200. What you end up finding is B equals 16. So therefore, finding A should be very easy because we made A the subject. Remember, here, yeah, let's call it equation 3. So now what we are going to do is to sub B into equation number 3 for A. Okay, so if you observe carefully, A was 40 minus B, which means A now is 40 minus 16, which is what? So you do 40 minus 16, you get 24. 24. So now we can summarize our answers. So our answers are as follows. A is 24 and B equals 16. And whoever is marking your paper will be very proud of you. So do make sure, guys, that you understand the equations that you need when you are dealing with grouped data. Okay, let's carry on. So we are required to write the model class. Okay, So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this table here and quickly put in A and B, right? So we're looking at 2.3. So for 2.3, we want the modal class. And remember, for the modal class, what we use is the frequency. So you look for the highest frequency, okay? So yeah, I don't need this. And I don't need all of that. Delete. Okay, see what happened. So let's take this, copy, let's paste it here. So what you will see is that for A, we have found the value. We found A to be 24, and we also found B. Okay, B is 16. So now if we look at the modal class, we'll look at the frequency. Which frequency is the highest here? If you observe carefully, it is this one. So we can easily therefore figure out the modal class to be that. So let's have a look at our answer, which is that the modal class is that it's where x is less than or equal to 400 but greater than 300. Okay, so that is our modal class. So I hope that it does make sense to you guys. It's all based on frequency. Okay. Then the next, they say, on the grid provided on the answer book, draw the cumulative frequency graph. So remember, when they say cumulative frequency graph, guys, it means Ogive curve, so 2.4. When they say cumulative frequency graph, all what they are saying is we should draw the Ogive curve. And that's all what we need to do. And in order for us to draw the Ogive curve, you need to remember that we need cumulative frequency. So that is what we do. We require cumulative frequency. So I'm going to go to the next page and figure out our cumulative frequency. Because it's very central in our plot. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll have our cumulative frequency. Okay, so we quickly have some lines here. Okay, so let's go ahead now and deal with this. So remember, the first part is very simple. You always put in your 7. Then the next one, you add this one and that one. So what you are going to have is a 7 plus 12. Okay, 7 plus 12. And that gives you 19. Okay. Then you are going to add the 19 with the 24 that we found, and you get 43. Then you add the 43 with the 35 that you see below, that becomes 78. Then add the 16, it becomes 94. Then you add the 6, and that becomes 100. Okay. So that is our cumulative frequency. Okay, guys. So what we can do is we can go ahead and do our plot, because this diagram here I was given, or you would be given if you are required to plot. So I just went to go and get the screenshot, and we can go ahead and do our plotting. So let's go ahead. So remember, whenever we're doing our Ogive curve, we are focusing on the upper limit. So at 100, we have 7. So if you look carefully, we figure out the scale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this is going in twos. Okay, so this means we have 2, 4, 6, 8. So I'm looking for 7. Okay, so that means 7 is somewhere in between here, and that is going to have an upper limit of 100. So should have a point somewhere there, right? So let's go to the next one, which is 200. So 200 is at 19. So 19 is very close to 20. So it's just below there. Let me see, 19. It's just below 20. And we're at 200. Okay, so it's there. Right. And then let's go to 300, which is at 43. So if you observe carefully, you know you have 42 here. So 43 is just in the middle here. Okay, because you're moving in steps of 2. Remember that. So that's 42. So 43 is moving somewhere here in the middle. And we're looking at 300. Okay, so we should put in a point somewhere there. And then at 400, we're at 78. So 78 is very close to 40. Okay, so I'm just going to draw a line, and that is at 400. So we have a point somewhere there. And then at 500, we have 94. So remember, this becomes 82. Sorry, 94. So that becomes 92. 94. So it becomes what we see on this line here. And this is looking at 594. Okay. And then the last one is going to be at 100, and that is 600. So that's there by the corner. Okay. So we can now go ahead and combine these lines here. Okay. So let's see. So the first one, and then we have that one, and then we have that one, then we have this one, and then we have that one. Okay, so you see that if you are given a graph paper, it is usually drawn according to scale, so your shape will come out well. Okay, so let's go and have a look at the next question, which is determine how many people paid more than 420 per month for their cell phone contracts. So what I'm going to do is I need to go and figure out where is 420, and then we go up. Okay, so let's go and find that. So remember, let me quickly figure out what's happening here. So for how many are these here? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that means we're moving in steps of 10. So we're looking for 420. So 1, 2. So we're looking at exactly this line here. Double check. 420. Yeah. Okay. So if that's the case, then let's quickly go up using that line. Right. Let's see. Okay. And then if you observe carefully, it gives us something very close to that there. Okay. Like that. Okay. So that's about what we get. If you look carefully in steps of 2s, that's about 82. Okay. Now we need to think carefully of exactly what this means. So that point there is at 82. Sorry, what's happening now here? Okay, deleted a very important line, this thing. Delete. Yeah, it's not smart. Okay, so if you look at that point, you will see that we have 82. Okay, now let's think of what this means. So if you observe carefully, people who were paying more than, so they were saying how many people paid more than 420. So if you think carefully, it's 82, and the maximum number of people, remember, it's 100. So it means the number of people who paid more than that a month, it's essentially this difference here. Okay, it's actually 100 minus 82. Okay, so that is what should happen. So right there, what we have is 100 minus 82. So if I look at my answer for, so this Ogive curve here is the answer for 2.4. Okay. Now if I look at the answer for 2.5, you will see that what I will have is 100 minus 82, which is just going to give us let me see. No, let's think carefully of what do I mean. So if we look at 420, we are saying that there's about 82 people who are paying at least 420. So there's at least 82 people who are paying 420. So it means people who are paying above 420, that is correct. It's supposed to be 100 minus 82. So if you do 100 minus 82, what you end up getting is 18. So what then is our answer? Well, let's put it in words. So our answer in words is that we have at least 18 people are paying 18 people are paying 420 or more. Okay, so that is what we are supposed to get for this question here. Okay, so I hope that you guys understand, but really this here was our answer. And that brings us to the end of question 2.5. And this here brings us to the end of the introduction on grouped data or grouped statistics. So please, guys, make sure that you like and share these great lessons done by iCampSA with other learners. Take care, enjoy, and pass. Cheers, guys.